Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. I am Joel Goldberg, and we're rolling along here in the summer. I know you might be listening to this in 2028, there won't be podcasts in 2050. It'll be something else, but who knows? This stuff is changing by the day. I love being able to bring these to you weekly. Also love the partnership I have with my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. Whether you are in KC, around the country, looking for a job, looking to hire someone, just looking for a good resource, they're my kind of people. I hope that means they're your kind of people as well. Great energy, phenomenal resource. They care. chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. My connection today, I always loved doing that before my intro because almost always, not all the time, but most of the time, my guest involves some kind of connection. And that's not true across the board. Sometimes we get solicited every day, by the way, and I think many of you in whatever industry you're in can relate to that. That's a whole nother discussion, by the way, the right way and wrong way of soliciting someone on LinkedIn or wherever it may be, an email. And I get a lot of these form things every single day. I listen to your podcast on fill in the blank, and I love this episode so much because fill in the blank. And it's like, another form letter. But the best ones come from recommendations or from mutual connections. And actually, my connection today was from the book that I wrote and the book that my guest wrote, working with the same publisher. And we were going to actually connect over a Royals game in San Diego, where it's always, I think, funny too when you have two guests from the same place that end up meeting somewhere else out of town. But that didn't happen because we weren't on TV that night, and my wife and I went out and enjoyed and explored San Diego. So we ended up back at my favorite coffee shop here in Kansas City, Revo Cup in Leawood. A little shout out to them. I try not to do that too much because I don't want it to get overcrowded, but that's my little secret. And sat down and had a phenomenal conversation with today's guest, who is a true leader in the digital marketing space, who has spent decades crafting award-winning success plans. Meet Corey Morris, the president and CEO behind Voltage, a premier digital agency built for brands that refuse to settle. He doesn't try to be everything to everyone. Instead, he remains focused, delivering only the things he does best. This against the grain mindset that has been the key to driving success and ROI for clients across the nation. I think that's one of the biggest things I got out of my coffee with Corey, is that there are a million different paths that you can chase. And he's really honed in on, no, let's eliminate those and focus on these. And for anyone that's an entrepreneur, that's hard to do. At least it is for me. So I'm happy to be joined right now by the author of the Digital Marketing Success Plan, How to Avoid Poor Communications, Misaligned Expectations, and Wasted Dollars, Corey Morris. Corey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Joel.
That was a long way of adding my own little spiel to the introduction, but I don't know. I'm always interested in how people connect, just because the world is about people and networking. And I feel like, as is the case, by the way, with some of the people that you've introduced me to since, that I feel like I've known you for a long time. So I guess it was meant to be. And you spoke so much to me when you talked about following the right path, the right lead, that focusing on what you do versus some of the other temptations out there, I guess I would say, because I think entrepreneurship, running a business, is like owning a house. The list will never stop. So what matters most, at least I find that when I'm off my game, my head's spinning and I'm chasing every single little tangent. How about for you?
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. Whether I'm in the office or in my home office and studio like I am today, I mean, the distractions are everywhere just based on physical space and time and demands and balancing family life and all of that. But to the point you made about those temptations, whether those are just in how I block my time and what my focus is, and thinking about high value activities versus just activities, to applying it to marketing plans or anything else. It's, time is a finite resource we have. And And I think when we don't manage it well, or we're not focused on quality across a lot of categories of life, it's when those temptations will come too, to take a bad deal or to just follow a path that takes us into a lot of wasted time, wasted dollars, and things that we can't get back.
Yeah. And, we probably, many of us learn it the hard way, or you learn it not even the hard way, by trial and error. In your space, it's still I know you've been there for a long time, and I want to get into how you got there too. It's very interesting how you landed where you did, and the growth that you've had. But I still feel like for most of us, like digital marketing, there are only so many people that really understand that, right? And it's your expertise, but there's so many levels and layers to it as well. At what point did you figure out what you wanted to hone in on? Like, how did you get there?
Yeah, so I really, we'll talk about maybe the entrepreneurial side of it in a moment, but really for me, thought I wanted to be in the business world somewhere. Broke kind of away from the rest of my family, all having doctor in their title, almost, and generationally as well. And I chose to do something else, and I thought maybe it would be finance minded. Got into college, and really realized that the marketing classes I had to take were where my passion was. And staring at, no offense to one of my good friends who's my financial advisor, but staring at the numbers all day, what I learned pretty quickly, and I'm glad I learned early enough, was not going to be the path for me. And so on the marketing side of things, I wasn't a creative. I wasn't like or on the tech side, a web developer, and wasn't writing copy back then. And so I realized that I probably was, if I wanted to work in an ad agency or a marketing department somewhere, ad agency would be in an account service type or project manager type role. So through some networking and, great fortune with just where I was seated at a dinner in college next to a professional, built a relationship that ended up turning into my first job in an ad agency here in Kansas City. And so that turned into opening up a world that I didn't know existed, of nerdery and a whole bunch of different things in the emergence back then in the early 2000s of search engines and the different technology and algorithms and things that fuel them, and really allowed me to pivot into that and find my area or niche of something that I could own and be an expert in.
And little did you realize that eventually you would end up working for this company and then taking it over. And that's a whole nother discussion that I want to have with you when you put your own stamp on things and go the route that you did. But how did you get out of the world that you were in, so to speak, and end up where you are now?
Yeah. So in the first agency I worked for, I'm still thankful to this day and will forever be that they were willing to invest in sending me to California to some of the industry leading training and certification, allowing me to make a pivot into a specialist role from more of a generalist one a few years into my career there. And I just embraced that and took that and ran with it. And then as new things emerged, like social media, I feel old now. It feels like social was around forever to all of us, right? It hasn't been. But as social media emerged and we went from just search engine optimization and Google ads to adding in Facebook and the world of all of that, I had to decide, do I want to go to a big company or bigger agency to advance my career and be just really narrow in search? Or do I want to go somewhere and kind of double down on all these channels and integrate things? And so that's the direction I went. It led to me being found essentially by Voltage. I hadn't heard of it. And they hired me as an employee there to start a digital marketing team. And I was excited. So it was taking what I had leveraged and learned and kind of maxed out on where I was and adding on some channels and opportunities to kind of start something from scratch within an organization that already existed.
If you go back to the early years, though, I mean, SEO is not new. I think anybody listening right now has at least my knowledge of SEO, which means we kind of get it has to do with being found online, and we kind of get that it's important, and we understand we need keywords. That's the lowest level. I'll put myself there. Like I know what it is, but I need a plan to execute and all that type of stuff. What was it like as you were first discovering it? Because it's a totally different world now.
Yeah, when I came into it in 2005 through really 2010 is where I was really felt like I'd gotten to a good place, and I had the chance to go to Silicon Valley and speak at a national conference out there, and that's really where I feel like I had gotten to a point where I understood it enough to know that how much I'm also not going to understand. And machine learning was starting, and all these things that we'll talk about that were precursors to AI now, but I won't go there yet. But back then it was still, Google was much more simple. It was a couple ads at the top, or they were actually on the right side, and 10 blue links. And that's how the world, 90% of the world found information. And naturally, I learned quickly that the constant in that industry is change. And I had to embrace that. I had to get comfortable with knowing that it changed, but that's what kind of reinvented the industry and the job over and over every year, and every client situation being different coming into that I felt like I could settle into a role because I would never burn out or get bored on this compared to other things. Like I mentioned earlier, if I was in finance staring at the numbers.
Which, by the way, I'm not trying to stick up for both of our finance friends. Some of them may be mutual friends. I don't know. They were born to do that, most of them. I mean, look, some are like anybody else. Some are in jobs that they're doing because they might be good at it, may love it, may not love it. And that's a great living. There are some of us that are wired in a way that will either never understand that would be me, not you, or just don't enjoy it and need the unknown every single day. For me, beyond the dream job of talking about baseball on TV, it's the unknown of not just what's going to happen tonight. As you and I are talking, I have no idea what's going to happen in tonight's game, but I also have no idea what lesson, what story are going to pop up that might be something I could write about, put on my website, put out on the social media, use as content in a speech or a newsletter, and on and on. That's what fuels me, is the uncertainty. There are a lot of people that need that certainty. That's the way they're wired. And so there's no right or wrong other than what aligns with you. You and I talked a lot about alignment. It's in the title of your book, misaligned expectations. But the beauty, I think, of what you're doing is that any given day showing up for work, it could be like a baseball game, because you don't know exactly how this is going to go. And in this rapidly changing world, and I think, Corey, that we could probably go back in the course of history and always say the world is changing, of course. But right now we're in this period of growth, in large part because of AI, that is turning the world upside down at rates that make our heads spin. How are you navigating all of that at a time? Like for me, and I'm not in your world. I mean, I'm dabbling in a little bit of your world. But for me, I just have this fear that I'm going to get left behind, that whether you like the change or don't, I generally do like change, but I also acknowledge change is hard. But what I really know is that if you don't move with that change and learn it and stay relevant, you will be out of touch and you will become obsolete. I don't know that happens tomorrow, but it's going to happen at some point. So I have a thirst for learning all of this. I don't have your level of understanding, but how has that sped up the process for you?
Yeah, we went through a period in digital marketing where it was by changes constant standards pretty stable for a period, and within the past few years, it's turned things upside down. When I think about what we do day to day and how businesses get found online and who we're working with Google being disrupted and doing their own disruption and trying to keep up with OpenAI and ChatGPT and everybody else, we're seeing less clicks through to websites from search results. And it's harder to be found. And so there's a new emphasis that I love personally. There's a new accountability for people in my space to understand quality versus quantity, and not just throw everything at the wall and know that something's going to stick and it works and it's good enough. But there's definitely a diversification of how, as consumers or even as business to business customers, how we're searching for things. We're not just going to Google and plugging in a phrase, or, we've gotten comfortable over the last decade maybe of talking to a voice assistant and asking it a question in more of a question form or conversational form. But now we're in real time working with, in some cases, with some type of chat or some type of AI bot or function to go back and forth. I've gone from, waking up in the middle of the night wondering if I'm going to be out of business to, embracing and getting super excited of where we're going, and now kind of settled somewhere in the middle there. But, still we're in the infancy right now. And while I continue to talk about the fact that there will always be a business out there who wants to be found by their target audience, and keeping that really at the essence of what we care about, how that tech changes in between and how that happens is key for us and my team to master. And to your point, I have colleagues who are like, I'm not signing up for this next evolution of the industry. I'm out. I'm moving on to what's next at that stage of their careers, because they've gone through however many decades of evolution. To those who are like, I'm excited, because people who are not going to adapt are going to get pushed out, and there's an opportunity to be nimble and be the first there to where it's going. And so my team has a very balanced approach and look at it. There's shiny objects that we can chase all day long, and I could go spend all day in the world of AI, where it's not going to necessarily move the needle today, but it's where we're going tomorrow, versus I could ignore it and get left way behind and eventually not have a place in this industry. So that balance is super important for my team and for me personally as well.
You know what, you said two words before that you didn't mean to say it the way that I heard them, but they'll bring up the point that I want to make. You said something about being in MySpace, and you weren't talking about that thing that used to be known as MySpace. But I was listening to a podcast somewhere in the last year, I think, where the guest or the host said something along the lines of, it's possible that ChatGPT will become the MySpace of AI. It might not. We don't know. We just know that it's going to change. At least for me, I would rather not skip one of these generations, because I feel like every day that I learn something about what's going on right now gets me closer to where we're going to. And again, that's never going to stop. And I think that there's room for everyone. I mean, I tell this story a lot on one of my early podcast guests, the CEO of H&R Block, Jeff Jones, who said that there's a slippery slope between tradition and irrelevance. We have to honor the past, but we can't stay stuck in the past. Well, everybody knows what H&R Block does. I don't need to, if I were to poll 100 listeners right now, I'm guessing all 100 know what H&R Block does. Now, if I were to poll them on how they want to do their taxes, might have some different answers. You might even have someone that still wants to come into the office and get the papers and do it that way. But you're also going to have a lot of people that want to do it on their phone, their tablet, and on and on and on. And that will continue to change as well. So, I mean, I've got to think part of this for you is you have to keep up, right? I mean, part of eliminating noise is making sure that you're up to date so that your clients have all these options, and that your reputation is one of being completely plugged in.
Absolutely. I have to fight the imposter syndrome. I have some friends and colleagues and people that I have tons of respect for, that show up at the top of the feed every time I go into LinkedIn, and they're doing the experiments and the breaking, leading edge stuff. We do some of the same experimentation. We look across our clients of data, and I look at it too. But at the same time, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's like I could spend all my time there, but not a lot of it's theory and not applicable yet. And so that's where it's important for me to know where we're going, but to fight all the other psychological things that happen with imposter syndrome, or comparing, or just getting stuck on, okay, well, or worried about the future and things I can't control. And so for me, as more of a realist and somewhere in the middle, where the highs aren't too high and the lows aren't too low, really focusing on what I can do and control. And a really good exercise for me in my own journey with AI has been anything I don't have time to do, don't want to do, or don't know how to do. That's where I go to an AI platform or engine to go test it. And those are the ideas I'll bring. If I have a string of 3 or 4 days where I don't get into any level of AI, I'll stack those up on a list and take them all in a session for an hour or two at the end of the week. Fridays typically seem great for that. And and things I can do even on my phone. Full disclosure, I was in just a sinus infection cloud, and it's probably a good thing during the Chiefs Super Bowl last year at a party, a family party with 30 people, 40 people, not at my house, which is probably good because I would have probably just gone to my room and ducked out. But at somebody else's house 30 minutes away, and I was already in a cloud, which helped me get through part of the first half. But by the time we're in the second half, I'm like, what can I be doing? I found myself on my phone doing a bunch of training in Chat GPT and just having it interview me and answer questions to get it closer to something I wanted to work on the next day.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm sure I'm like a lot of people out there right now. There are days where I think that my Chat GPT knows me better than anyone else. And there are other days where I'm like, have you not been paying attention? And ultimately that was my fault, right? Bad prompts or whatever it might be. But it's become a great, we got so hung up on the early stages, this is cheating. This is, you can't write papers if you're in school this way, instead of focusing on how can this make you better at what you do. And by the way, there's a lane, I'll say this over and over again, that as everyone gets better at this, yes, you want to get better than everyone. You also need to remember the other skills that could be the differentiator, because if everybody learns how to do this, we still need to remember how to be humans. We still need to remember how to have the balance to automation, to put our personal touches on things as good as this gets. How do you balance that too? Because it's becoming easier and easier to just put your hands back, kick your feet up in the air and say, go, I'll let you do your thing.
Yeah, and I look at this again with what I do for a living a couple different ways, as me, the consumer side of it, versus serving businesses and helping them get their target customer. And something that's always been important, but it's becoming amplified, is that whatever that personal element and touch point, the human connection is. I mentioned earlier that we're seeing less and less clicks from Google. Some of them are shifting over to getting traffic from the search functions and exploratory functions of AI. So if we're getting less people coming through, we can't waste that opportunity. But at the same time, we have the opportunity. Again, I'm speaking to anyone who is in a business out there, to connect with people more one-to-one, instead of have blanket personas and the masses that we're trying to reach and hope that our message resonates with someone. There's accountability here where we have to connect with them, but it should stir that desire for us to actually say, okay, I don't have to have 100 people come to my site to reach my business goal a day. I can have 10, and it can be the right 10 when we're not guessing as much. And so that's what's exciting, because those who have a strong brand story and message, unless you're selling on being the low price leader for something, the importance of being authentic as to who you are as a person or as a company out there, and who you're talking to, and making a meaningful and worthwhile connection. And so that's what gets me excited, because we're coming back to that, or we're being forced back to that, if we've been lazy or we've been doing a more enterprise level blanket approach versus a more tailored personal approach.
I think that in anything in life, the pendulum is going to swing, and the pendulum is swinging all the way to that automation side. And then it's going to come back, because what people are going to see is, oh, wait a minute, those that are figuring out the human side of this, or not forgetting the human side of it, might have a competitive advantage, right? That could become the market inefficiency, in the same way that right now everybody's going to that one side. So finding that balance. Okay, a few things before we get to the baseball themed questions. I want to talk about the book in a moment, but I think this is a question I love to ask people as they take over companies, as they put their stamp on it, that it's always going to be, look, we saw it with a great example is the Royals, for any baseball fans out there. When JJ Piccolo took over for Dayton Moore, that's not the owner of the team, but that's the general manager, the vice president, the head of all baseball operations. And JJ Piccolo replaced his boss, Dayton Moore, who was let go, and that was his mentor. But it's different. So much of the way he leads now does have some of Dayton's influence, but it also very much has who he is. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, and I knew exactly where you were going with this question as you started setting that up. I had the opportunity to be in the number two role for a number of years, and then go from employee to owner. I think there are some awesome things that I get to have in my story that resonate with my staff and ever you hire. Is it's not that I started this thing from the ground up. My entrepreneurial journey is different. Um, and so I sat in so many of those other seats as an employee versus being the founder and having to scrap through, one seat, maybe wearing multiple hats. But I formally had a lot of different titles and worked my way through a lot of different seats in my career. So it helps me to remember, and it's humbling at times to see someone with the same title I had and how much further they are in intelligence and in expertise than I was at that point in my career too. So that's a huge lesson. But for me, in year one, I wanted to just keep everything. When the previous owner exited on great terms. I mean, we went through an intentional succession plan for a year and a half. I thought I'd have a year of little change to let everybody get used to it. And some of the things I learned a couple of hard lessons. One was I'm a thinker and an analyzer. In fact, analyst, it was part of my title in multiple roles I had, analyst and strategist. And so I'm going to look at things from every angle. I'm going to take my time to make the right decision. And then there's a big perfectionist part of me as well that I struggle with. And what I realized and found out pretty quickly was if I stall and don't make a decision, there's risk in that. And I had to learn that the hard way, of the risks of inaction or not making a decision versus making the wrong decision that I could roll back or learn from. And so holding my team back and my staff back by not making a decision on things that weren't consequential overall, and how to triage a lot of decision making. I couldn't, or where to do it by committee versus just making an executive decision and live with it. So that was one big thing for me. And after breaking through that in the first year and understanding that the level of risks I'm taking by not taking action, that opened up a new world for me for sure.
And letting your people do what they do, right? I mean, that's something that you told me about when we were at coffee, of not being in the way. And everybody has their different comfort levels with that. But I know that could be a tough thing to do too when you've done some of those roles before.
Yeah. I've had a couple of situations where, it's burned me, where people have taken advantage of that. But for the most part, if I look at the 99% of me allowing people to be autonomous and have authority and make decisions, that's where so much of the growth came in my career, by being allowed to make some of those mistakes and to learn from them. And as long as people are supported, there's open lines of communication. I mean, we have one-on-one processes and things like that. I mean, I'm there and for them. But to give people the sense that I'm not sitting there watching what time they come in, what time they leave. I'm not, micromanaging anything they do. That's the type of growth mindset, almost micro entrepreneurial feeling that I love fostering in my company. In fact, I have several past employees who now have started and own their own businesses and did so with my blessing. I mean, I might have been frustrated at a moment personally, selfishly, that I was losing a rock star employee, but I knew where they were going and where their career was going to take them. And so it makes me really excited that they got to explore that within my company versus feel like they had to just come in and clock out and do a certain job that they may or may not love for the next 10 years of their career.
All right, last question before the baseball themed ones. The book, which is a really easy read. I say that because it's not if you're an expert at this, or I know I hear a lot of people in your world, Corey, referring to themselves as data nerds or some form of that, which I think is actually a very hip and cool way of saying that data is cool. And not everybody would agree with that, but I actually think it is. I just need to understand it on a better level so that I too can become that data nerd. But the point is that this book really is meant for people like me that want to learn more about it. And I love acronyms, by the way. So you have the acronym of START: strategy, tactics, application, review, and transformation. START. Give me a little bit more of an overview on that, because I think that is a good start.
Yeah, I've watched way over 20 years of my career, watched way too many companies before they get to me, or just through networking, hear stories of companies and brands or entrepreneurs or owners who spend a whole bunch of money in Google ads or with an agency like mine, and find out 6 months in or a year in that they've wasted 5, 6, sometimes 7 figures and got no return on investment for it. There's a temptation, whether you're well versed in the subject matter and technology or not, to think, well, it's optimization and it's ever changing, like we talked about. And so just start somewhere, you test and learn as you go. And yes, there is optimization, there's testing and learning, and there's adapting the plan and agile, methodologies and aspects in it. But if you don't have a plan, and if you just start throwing money out there in Google ads, you're finding out in the most expensive way possible whether it works for you or not, or you blow through it without truly understanding and doing any level of pure testing versus throw money at the wall and see if it sticks or not. So START is, for me, I had to get comfortable with, I want to give away our process. Because I know that by giving it away, we're starting at a baseline and you're comfortable with it. And if I'm not right for you, or if I can just help you and you pick up the book and you've got a great process, and I have one new idea to slot into that, great. But how to make the process approachable. This isn't rocket science. It is tech heavy, but it's not rocket science. And so we wanted to give it away. And so this is what we do in the first 30 to 90 days for any client that walks through our doors. And this is what I speak about freely and openly with anyone who will listen to me and enjoy listening to me about it. Because I don't want people to be more statistics, getting taken a ride by Google. I say that, and I haven't been removed from the Google partner program yet, even though I say that all the time, that Google will take your money whether it's working or not for you.
Why wouldn't they?
And so will agencies, right? I'm getting paid whether it's working or not. And so thankfully for us, and for I have so many great colleagues who have their own version of planning and processes. Thankfully, this has been a tool where I can get out in front of things and we can talk about some of the key questions that we need to get answered in terms of business outcomes, and not just a bunch of marketing metrics and fluffy things that we're talking about, to make sure that we've mapped out a plan. So getting the strategy right. And in many cases, that tactics are mistaken for a strategy.
Yeah.
Posting 5 times a week on social, writing 3 blog posts a week, sending out a bunch of emails. That's not a strategy in and of itself. Those are the tactics. Are those the right tactics? Well, we have to have our strategy and goals defined to look through that lens, and then it flows from there. So strategy, tactics, application or the assets we need. Is our website in a good place? What kind of content do we need to produce? Is it tailored properly? The R is review, and that's making sure we have a measurement plan in place and we can see all the way through that this is providing return on investment or not. And the T is transformation. That's where we don't just file this thing away. We don't just go through a planning exercise for the heck of it, and then we're busy in 2 months and it all goes on the shelf, or it's all in someone's head and that person leaves to go to another company and they're with your plan. So START is strategy, tactics, application, review, and transformation. And like I said, it's a nice process that you can get in and out of, and or at different times too. If you get stuck halfway through it, I'm glad you got stuck in this process and you didn't find out down the road when you've invested a lot of money somewhere that didn't work, that you wish you had gone back and made some decisions or broken through an impasse.
Yeah. It's a great lesson too in just adding value. Doesn't have to just be for clients or even prospects. Adding value that's comfortable, making a difference that way. It helps build a reputation, and it leads to wherever it leads to. It's no different than doing this podcast, grabbing coffee, all these type of things, and you see where it goes. But my hope is that people are listening to this and get a little bit more intrigued or learn a little something more, or maybe they pick up the book and who knows what that leads to. That's the point of all this. Okay, you're a baseball guy, but baseball themed questions. What's the biggest home run that you've hit?
Yeah, one that actually I didn't realize that at the time was laying the groundwork for this process, working with a third-party logistics company several years ago. They were a spinoff of a big one, a national one that was based here in Kansas City, and they were international in their focus. And they had a one-person marketing team, and we came in as their agency, and we had to really pick up a lot of pieces. And I didn't realize we were doing Start at the time, and we didn't do it in 90 days in a nice, neat, guided process. In partnership with them, it was probably 18 months of us figuring out what they didn't know and what we didn't know, and finding ways to build the systems and build the plan. But ultimately got to a point where, I mean, we're talking about 2,300% return on investment. We're talking millions of dollars on a 5-digit marketing spend. And it was just a phenomenal case study that will be hard to top. It's my challenge to top it, or for my team to top it in the rest of my career, but was a really groundwork. And more importantly for me, beyond the results and the wins for the client, was seeing the pieces and the groundwork for this process and plan to have it validated before we put it into a framework.
Good stuff there. How about a swing and a miss? And what did you learn from it along the way?
Yeah, I go fully into the story. If you pick up the book, I get it out of the way really early on as to why this matters. But as I first got into search engine optimization, got my career going in the first agency I was in, I had a client who was a local attorney, and I was so excited 3 months in. Hadn't, back then all my reports were on paper, meetings were in person. He came in, sat down, I walked him through the glossy paper, going through all the charts and all the metrics that were green and all the graphs up and to the right. I had him ranked top 5 for all these key terms. I even showed that we got tracked phone calls, 20 phone calls through that month. So I'm excited. I can't shut up because I'm just excited to go through it, get to the end of it. He's silent. He pushes the paper across the table a little bit and says, "That's great, Corey, but I didn't get a single new case from this." And so that was like a stomach drop, gut wrenching moment. And the learning from that was I had to understand his business and how cases worked and what his revenue model was, not just getting it up to what the search engine cared about and getting those vanity metrics, but getting something that really moved the needle for his business. And thankfully, there's a happy ending to that story where 3 months later, we got it dialed in and we were in a good place. But it was a life lesson that I learned to not be scared of going beyond what I can control and understanding that, and having a business conversation, not just a marketing conversation.
Great lesson there. All right. And the last one, small ball. What are the little things that lead to big results for you?
I had a chance the other day with some other agency owners I know from around the country, and we're talking about the ups and downs economically and in our world that we've honestly experienced for the last few years, or ever since really COVID. But it was interesting as we were looking at what had worked for me and played out well compared to what I would have predicted a year ago. And what I looked at is I joked, I'm thinking mid 2024, Corey, for the things that are going well in mid 2025. And what I mean there is a kind of relentless pursuit of being helpful and helping and not selling. And so some of the relationships that came through, much like how we met through networking or conversations, were people that are like, "Hey, here's a great person you should know." And we set up a time over Zoom, over coffee, whatever it might be, and to just be genuinely curious and interested in their story. And maybe that's just me getting older and nostalgia creeps in, or the fact that I've seen so many unique stories of how people have started their businesses, or how their career got to where it is, or what they're interested in, if it's something that is foreign to me possibly. But through so many of those conversations organically, when I can't predict it, 6 months, a year later, things come back to me, or maybe a 4th degree connection happens, and all of a sudden my phone rings and there's this opportunity for this cool new partnership I might be able to have. So it might feel like that was an easy answer to say networking, but I don't look at it as networking because I'm not trying to force the issue here. It's more about just genuinely being curious about others' stories and being willing to listen first in a world that is so full of noise.
That to me is the beauty of these podcasts too, because it gives an opportunity, if the fit is right, to be able to share these conversations. You know, like the conversation you and I are having right now isn't all that different than what we did in our coffee, like that, which is exactly the type of interview I like to do. It's supposed to just be a conversation, an organic conversation. I'm not a script guy unless I have to be. And then you see where it goes. You know, you introduced me to some incredible people that have already led to some really cool conversations. And I've introduced you to some people that I thought you'd be a good guest on their podcast, people that I didn't even know a year ago that had me on their podcast and vice versa. And suddenly, I love to say this all the time, it's all about connecting dots, and whether that's through people or ideas, and you never know where it's going. So that to me is small ball at its greatest. And I think you and I are very much in alignment on that. I want to get my 4 final questions as we round the bases. And this is where we get to break out some of our fun research. And I don't even know that you need a good SEO to find this. I just need a good assistant, which I have in Ashley. So let's start with this one. Do I understand correctly in looking through my files that you once met June and Johnny Cash in person? And if this is so, I need to know the story.
Yeah. Grew up, I mentioned family of doctors. So my dad would go to a conference every year down at Big Cedar in south of Branson. And I was a kid, and I don't need to date myself too much, but I was a kid, and my dad was at the conference. We were just taking a leisurely time getting ready that morning. So my mom, my little brother, and I are in the hotel room. All of a sudden, water starts coming through our ceiling. We thought we were on the top floor and if you've been to Big Cedar, it's probably the first, if not the second, lodge building there, way up on the hill. So just a normal hotel room. We're up there, and water starts flooding our room, and it's coming through the ceiling, and you know, there's no other rooms to move us to. They're booked. It's the middle of the summer, and they get in the carpet fans. The resort does a great job of just taking care of us. Next morning, we get a knock on our door, and it's someone who came from upstairs. We didn't realize the entire upstairs floor was a private suite. And she knocks on our door and introduces herself. And I'm pretty sure my mom was speechless when she introduced herself as June Cash. And as I'm standing there, I'm not really I get it a little bit. I kind of know who this is. And then I hear the boots coming down the stairs, and I start to see black pants, and then I see a black jacket, and the man in black himself comes down and introduces himself by name as if we had no idea who he was. And humbly, they apologized for the jacuzzi leaking in their suite as if it was their fault.
Yeah.
And so that was a phenomenal a moment that I'll never forget. And as we're scrambling to find notebook paper to get an autograph on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unbelievable. I think everybody has some version of that story with that famous person they bumped into at fill in the blank. It doesn't usually involve a jacuzzi flooding a resort room, but I don't know how many people have that Johnny Cash story. So that is super, super cool. One that you'll never forget, obviously. Okay, second question as we round the bases. I am also of the understanding that you personally experienced a tornado. What happened there?
Yeah, so I went to William Jewell here in the KC suburbs, and my freshman year got ended, and finals week even got canceled because of the tornado. Actually, this was not my freshman year. It was 2003, sophomore year. And so, yeah, we were in our fraternity house out down on the edge of campus, and I've got I was in the house with a bunch of football linemen and soccer players and non-athletes, non-college athletes like me, and from various parts of the Midwest and all over the world. I will never forget my lineman football player friend who was sitting in the hallway crying because he's from Phoenix, and we had gone through an ice storm and then a tornado, and he's like, I don't want to be here anymore. And hearing it rumble by the freight train, we were standing on the deck, see blue lightning as it shows up out of nowhere and is hitting all the power transformers. We run downstairs, hear it go by, and then I run back upstairs and open the door, the front door of the house. It sucks open. A basketball-sized piece of hail lands a foot in front of the guy's truck who is parked in the driveway. Wow. And we look out past and we see it picking up the batting cages on the baseball field and just going out of town. And back then we didn't have iPhones, so we got a couple of really grainy pictures and some news coverage video, but yeah, we definitely saw it.
Crazy. We
Which
all could
doesn't
be
surprise anybody when I tell people from other parts of the world that they're like, well, you're from the Midwest. I'm like,
yeah,
they assume we've all seen one.
right. They also are scared out of their minds at the thought of it. I raced one back once, and when I say race back, it wasn't behind me. I was just a bunch of years ago looking at the radar as we had landed from a Royals trip, and I could see that it was going to be somewhere around the area of my house, about 30 minutes from when I was leaving the downtown airport. And sure enough, I pulled into the neighborhood, and there was carpet that had been laid out by the neighbors for pickup. And by the time I got out of my car, that carpet was not, I didn't see it moving, but it was no longer on the street. It was basically blocking my car, and I had to push as hard as I could to get out of my truck and then get down to the basement. So yes, that is all part of living in this part of the country, and we're sort of used to it, but you never can quite get used to it unless you're a storm chaser. Okay, third question as we round the bases. Among the many things you do in the book and your work, you do a lot of speaking now too. How much do you enjoy that part, and what's the key for you in that speaking? Because you and I are different types of speakers, at least in terms of I'm speaking about culture and leadership, trust, teamwork, and you're speaking about a very specific topic. But I know based on the way that you write that you want to make this very interesting for people, not just the quote unquote data nerds. What's the key for you in speaking?
Yeah, early on, it was really just about being a nerd amongst other nerds, and so I got to speak at different conferences in Silicon Valley and some regional and national events on the tech of it. And so I'm there talking SEO or Google with other people doing it, other practitioners and colleagues and peers. It really got more personal for me, though, when I realized who I can help with that instead of just sharing with peers and getting into other different avenues. And so when I'm speaking to a room of CMOs or marketing directors or even marketing coordinators and people just starting their career or students, if I can share just one nugget of what I learned the hard way, probably that to keep them from wasting their time or losing a lot of money on something that doesn't work, that's where my passion is. So I've shifted a lot of my focus from just nerding out to really sharing now that I feel like I have a few lessons, again, learn the hard way, not because I'm perfect or have it figured out more than anybody else, but what I can share so somebody else doesn't have to go through that thing that I had a client or I had a colleague or a friend go through, as we're all trying to do the best for our companies and our families.
And there's such a great lesson there. It really goes full circle to where we started this podcast about eliminating all that noise and focusing in on ways to help people and the things that you're good at, and so much of what you talked about with the book and the start process too, right? Now, hey, I'm not going to charge you for all of this and suck you in. Let me just help. And then if along the way that draws your interest, great. And if it doesn't, you're a little better for it. Hey, that doesn't make you look bad. It makes you look really good. And, just putting it out there to, as some say, putting it out there to the universe.
And in so many cases, if it's not a right fit, learning, I say this a lot too, learning how to sell myself out of a deal.
Yep.
If I'm not the right fit, and I've got a friend over here who is perfect for you and your business and where you are right now, and you'll get more value from working with them than me, then that's a win for everyone too. Versus leaving you out in the wind to go figure it out with, and maybe get taken advantage of.
Yeah, that's so much easier said than done. But I think once you figure it out and you get comfortable with it, it becomes a no-brainer. And you found that sweet spot. Okay, walk-off question. This is, I wouldn't say it's a loaded question, but it could go anywhere. What's next in this world? And I know that could be a million different things, but something that's on your mind right now. What's the next step development, whether it be AI, digital marketing? The world, as I said before, is moving fast. What are you looking forward to, or what are you bracing for?
That is a loaded question. Well, I've joked for like the last 10 years about, I don't care if tomorrow it's, ads that are in holograms versus on a screen in Google or whatever. that's where I'll go if that's where the industry goes and that's how people find information. But I think it's really interesting. And it just even this past week, as some of the AI platforms were caught like defaulting back to like Google results. And it's like what's new is old and what's old is new, right? And a lot of those things swing around. And so the point that you made that was great too about that human side of it, and something we talked about, I think that will prevail. We'll get to a point where we've had enough of the automation and we need the human aspect of it back. I was thinking about how it would apply to sports. I'm thinking about the things that we don't want too much in, and I'm not even going to go into the tech in sports, so that we're not going to talk about the pitch clock, but I mean just the things. I'm like, we're not going to pay to watch, well, maybe we will, I don't know, maybe I won't be here for it, but pay to watch robots and AI play sports or play chess or whatever. So there'll be aspects, I believe there will be aspects of life that will laugh that we did things the manual way one day, but we'll also really work hard to protect and enjoy the passions and the things that we don't want that automated or to live in a computer world with too. So I think there'll be balance. We'll find it. There'll be some scary things that we won't like, and some things that we'll wonder why we ever did it the old way. And I think that's where we'll settle, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah, I think I buy all of that. I'm fascinated by it. I'm excited by where it's going, scared of some of it, and that's okay as well. A reminder, if you want to get a copy of the book, The Digital Marketing Success Plan, How to Avoid Poor Communications, Misaligned Expectations, and Wasted Dollars by Corey Morris, published by Indie Books International, who also did mine. And you could also find out more about the company that Corey owns. Voltage.digital is where to find them online, the premier digital agency for challenger brands, and highly recommend that you check out the website. We'll have that in the show notes, the book, and much more. Corey, thanks for imparting all of your wisdom on this podcast, and great to be able to visit with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much, Joel.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.